This is Codified Wisdom. Sharp insights, no fluff, and real-world wisdom from leaders who want to get you further, faster. Now, here's your host, Eric Eager.
Hey, welcome back to Codified Wisdom, where we explore the real-time, real-life experiences of leaders and their journeys and the innovations that they have in shaping their business future. And today's guest, again, man, I'm excited because I've been following and been watching Aaron Harris. He's the global CTO of Sage, and he was former CTO of Intacct, where he helped pioneer one of the first multi-tenant cloud-native financial management platforms. And he's a thought leader in the AI space today, and especially in this continuous improvement in accounting and the future of finance. At Sage, he's leading the charge in making intelligent systems not just a possibility, but a reality. And it's a reality for small and medium-sized businesses around the world. So today's conversation is going to explore a vision that he's been developing. And what we're working at Formback Data is really this: how do you get 100 clients for one advisor? And it's all about helping advisors amplify their impact, serving more clients, more meaningful, more impactful. And instead of just adding more hours in headcount, it's enabling to make smarter, more proactive guidance. So, hey, again, excited to have Aaron on today's Codified Wisdom. And, what we want to talk to first of all, before we get into, kind of vision for the future, I want to talk to you about your journey and your vision, because either you had it completely mapped out and when you were in high school and beyond, or maybe you didn't. Tell us about your journey of how you ended up being a global leader of a global software company.
So thanks for indulging me on telling some of these stories. So the quick answer is no, I did not have it mapped out, and I wouldn't have in a million years thought that I would be in the accounting industry. I first fell in love with computers when I first saw one in the early 80s, when I was 10 or 11 years old. I made my first buck as a programmer when I was 12. I've always been attracted to technology, and have found coding especially to be very therapeutic. So even as the CTO of Sage, I was still coding up until till after we sold the company to when I was CTO at Intacct. I was still coding up until we sold the company to Sage, and even until 2 years after that, I finally stopped coding when I became the global CTO. So I've always loved coding. I dabbled with a few things in college. I was briefly a comparative literature major. I was briefly a civil engineering major. I love architecture. But
Wow.
what happened was I did computer science as a major and got bored. And a friend talked me into getting an accounting degree. And this kid must have been the greatest salesperson on earth, because in a million years, I wouldn't have considered that. But his pitch was, get a bachelor's degree in accounting. It's a great, industry to get into, and then get a master's degree in information systems or computer science or something, which is exactly what I did. And I've always been entrepreneurial. I started a software company when I was in college, doing accounting for home builders.
Oh,
I
wow.
built the accounting system on campus for the graphic design department, and I even attracted some angel investors in what I was doing. But ultimately I was chicken. I was too afraid to take their money, and instead I went with the safe route and took a job at Arthur Andersen, which turned out to not be super safe. they went out of business about 2.5 years after I started.
No correlation there. No correlation.
No, I had nothing to do with it. I quickly realized I wasn't a fit there. Met the founder of Intacct. He convinced me to move to California, and the rest is history. That was a little over 25 years ago, and I've had the same job pretty much ever since.
Wow. Now, when he convinced you to join Intacct, how big were they?
I was the 7th employee.
Okay, so let's dive into it and spend a few minutes on that. Number 7 employee, and how big was Intacct at the time when the Sage acquisition took place?
About $100 million in revenue. Maybe 450 employees.
Okay, so
Growing
450 employees.
35%. Yeah, in these types of conversations, I always have to, it wasn't a straight line. Employees
No.
1 through 6 were gone within 2 years. We laid off 85% of the company, a year and a half in. We just picked a bad time to start Intacct. That turned into an advantage because we had a product before,
Yeah.
others who were trying to get into the space. But it wasn't a straight line. That's for sure. We didn't really get traction until 2007, 2008.
And so that's what I always like to talk about a little bit is that, everyone wants to hear about the big win, and the journey to get to that, was there a couple of times that, like you said, you had to do, 85% reduction, hanging in there. Were there times in where you were thinking that, man, what have I done? It's like you keep hanging in there and hanging in. Is anybody going to get it? Because you're innovating in the first in the space or close to it. What were some of the struggles there of convincing people to do, a cloud-based accounting package? Because only thing I'd say is back then, if I can remember, it was this big, scary, I don't want to put my data in the cloud. I don't want to do these things. Talk a little bit about how you were innovating in space. Some of the challenges when you were going through that.
Yeah, we were definitely software as a service before the term was coined. We were cloud before the term was coined. We were multi-tenant before the term was coined. Some of the more emotional interactions I've had with the media and analysts over the years have been trying to control the narrative on multi-tenancy. There's a beauty to youth and naivety, I think, that leads to a lot of this. There's also a bit of overconfidence in youth, and I think it's hard to replicate when we're more mature and experienced. But what it meant was that we didn't feel the need to go look at all the other accounting products and follow the way things were done. We were already doing something in a very different way by building an accounting product that you accessed from a web browser, right? And we hosted it and we had your data. That was already pretty groundbreaking. And so it kind of gave us the license, that together with our youthful exuberance to do things differently. What we got wrong was just how long and how hard the journey would be to get people to trust the cloud, to actually put their data up there, to really recognize the value of the cloud. There's the obvious anytime, anywhere access, but
Yeah,
that's not enough, right? You have to sell them on but also you don't have to worry about the upgrades. You get constant innovation. There's so much more to it that it took. Honestly, I thought I was going to be living on a private island 2 or 3 years after we started the business. I didn't I had no idea that we would be living paycheck to paycheck as a company, essentially, and we'd be clawing to survive. But slowly, people started to get it. And we started to find niches where the cloud proposition had incredible value beyond just anytime, anywhere access. With accounting firms was one of the first places, right? That, having to deal with 100 different clients with different versions of QuickBooks files, having to deal with them sending you those files, having to make sure that you could support all the various versions, having to reconcile any changes that you make to the files while they're still running their businesses, merging the changes back. I mean, that's a nightmare that probably people don't think about today. The cloud was just such an obvious solution to that for accounting firms.
Wow. And man, you bring a great point up. And now, let's kind of transition, from that, because you're blazing, I guess the thing is that you don't, you don't appear to be just sitting back and relaxing and going, okay, my job's done. It's now you're on to the next frontier. And, this thing called AI is hitting us from all directions. And I know that some people are fearful, change is hard. And, you see all the, AI is going to come replace my job, those kind of things. But let's talk a little bit about, kind of the next step. Where are you seeing, more specifically, the accounting shift, that a lot of the things that, we've all grown up learning the hard way, or just, hey, this is how I do it. You're going to send me out on an audit or do a tax or do this, and you're going to reconcile accounts, and you're going to reconcile and do financial statements. Well, now that world is going to get automated, and AI is going to take over for that. And there's going to be this push now to, hey, I need to be an advisor. I need to be able to not look backwards but forward. Tell me a little about your vision now of how AI is going to exponentially help the capacity of advisors to help multiple clients.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of want to start with the philosophy and the vision here. When I first got started building accounting software, what surprised me was that accountants, whether they're in practice or in industry, within private business, how little time they spent actually doing the things that I learned accountants do when I was getting my degree. Right? They weren't helping businesses to understand their financial performance. They weren't implementing processes and ways of working that lead to better decisions. They weren't being the advisors that I was trained and educated to be, right. If I'd gone on to be an accountant, I was shocked that what it meant was basically record keeping and a lot of repetitive work that resulted in reports that were delivered far after the fact and didn't add a lot of value other than proving compliance. They sort of had to just do the non-negotiable stuff that's completely got in the way of what I think accountants get into the profession to do, which is to be these advisors, and they're trained to be advisors. So I think we're now empowered by technology to actually realize the potential of the industry, and for the entire history of the industry, we've been held back. Technology hasn't enabled us to become these advisors. So and there's been a journey along the way, going from PC accounting products and client server products that sort of democratized access to technology so that accountants could use the same technology that was actually producing the work. The cloud sort of made everything faster and more seamless and more integrated. And now what AI is doing is we're finally now starting to not just make those non-negotiable jobs faster and more efficient. We're now starting to say, okay, it's not your job anymore. It's technology's job, and your job is to come in as a manager to make sure that technology is doing the job the way that it should, and to manage exceptions and to make critical decisions, and be the supervisor to this work that's happening. And AI is I think what finally tips the scales from the old world to the new world, where living we're living up to, I think, what every professional in the industry was trained to do.
Wow. I think that's that's exciting for the profession, and as a recovering CPA, as I like to joke, which I still have my license. Okay, this still get my CPA credit. But to your point, I mean, how many years have you seen that? Hey, I want to be an advisor. I want to help. But at the end of the day, I am jumping through 52 hoops to make sure the numbers are right, and then to get beyond just the numbers being produced, but to identify if there's a potential risk or an opportunity in front of my client. I've still got to go and jump through 82 spreadsheets and wasn't scalable. Talk about a little bit about, now, because as a profession, we're always rear view mirror looking, you know, and we want to be in the front. It's kind of like one of those things that, like, we always wanted to be in the front windshield. But by the time you got to the point where you could even look forward, you were exhausted, and the client doesn't, want to pay you for all that work to get to that point. Talk about this new ability for now. AI is getting the compliance and what I want to call kind of the transactional foundation of the accounting profession in place. Talk a little bit about and there's a lot of talk about agentic and how it's going to integrate in there. Talk about what you think the forward-looking ability of a CPA or an accounting advisor now versus, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, there's there is a foundation that has to be built, and that foundation is getting real-time, reliable information, right? To make decisions from. And a lot of the focus, for most of my time in building software has been on that first piece.
Yeah.
How do we automate? I call it continuous accounting, right? How do we automate the capture and the accounting of everything that happens in the business in real time? And then how do we pair technology with that to provide continuous assurance, so that there's confidence in the reliability, the accuracy of this data, but also confidence that the business is acting in a compliant way, so that you can, without anxiety, turn your attention to the future. So, that's been the bulk of the focus for most of my career. But in the last 3 or 4 years, we've really reached this point where we can now apply technology to this third area that I always talk about, which is continuous insights. And the way that I describe it, if you go through a sales process to buy Sage Intacct today, one of the first things you're going to see is this beautiful dashboard, right? You always lead with these dashboards, and we use these dashboards to show off all the analysis you can do. You can slice and dice by dimension. You can look at both financial and operational, performance metrics. They're really, really beautiful. They're really interactive. You can drill down. The problem is that you have to decide what you want to measure. You have to decide how you want to visualize it so that any insights are, apparent in the data. You've got to remember to go to the dashboard to look for those insights, right? So it's when I describe it that way, it doesn't sound quite as state of the art. The big breakthrough now with AI and what enabled this is the power of large language models. But I also want to stress that it's those large language models that can drive sort of the orchestration and the agentic capabilities but the actual work is traditional technology. It's a more task-oriented AI. But the world we're building now is one where AI, first of all, you don't have to tell it what to pay attention to. It's built a view of your business in its entirety across all that real-time reliable data.
Yeah.
It's developed patterns of understanding for how the business operates, where it's going directionally, and it's able to identify in real time across the broadest possible view of the business when there's something of interest that's going on. It could be a pattern has changed. Maybe your cash flow forecast has suddenly increased. Or, and this is something that I love to talk about, maybe something has happened in the business that isn't actually accounting, it has no accounting associated with it, like taking sales orders. There's no gap on a sales order. It's just a sales order.
Yeah.
But if something changes in sort of the activity around sales orders, that could then lead down the road to a change in cash collections, right? So we're really now entering this super exciting phase where AI can sit over everything, can see everything that's happening, and then can just sort of raise the flag and grab the attention of a human when there's something interesting that deserves more attention, that will probably lead to a decision that will improve the performance of the business.
Yeah, and then that's and and a selfish plug here. This is the kind of stuff that we're doing at Code, at For Impact Data was this. The dashboards are always like, so what now? What? Okay, I'm burning cash. What do I do about it? And then I think you hit a really. It doesn't sound real sexy, but the key point on that too is the foundational of getting the numbers right, accurate, and in a standard structured format. That is so critical that in a providing a system that is continuously closing is so critical for everything else. Because if you think about it, the LLMs, they can't do their job if I haven't closed the books. If the books aren't closed and it's 45 in today's world of things moving, an AI company can come out of nowhere and have 1 billion users, like, chat, now 35, 45, 60 days in closing your books can be a lifetime in market conditions. So, as a boring old accountant, man, I appreciate the vision of just getting that even faster, that vision of continuously, the continuous close so that you can get to those decision points. Because on the flip side, if you got bad data coming in or you have a misadjustment or something there, you could make some critically bad decisions because of the entries weren't booked properly.
Yeah. And what more commonly happens is you have an opportunity to make a decision, but you don't have the confidence in the numbers to make a decision that appropriately matches the risk, or that reflects a good understanding of your health before making that decision. That's the story you hear more often. It's the missed opportunities because you lack the confidence to make the decision.
Yeah, how many entrepreneurs do you see that a lot of times is just gut instinct? They've got some signals, but there's a little bit of flying by the seat of your pants because I don't have quite the information to make the confidence or to follow up. How many of you see the no decision? How many times have you seen that in the entrepreneurs that the thousands of businesses that I know yourself at Sage get to talk to all the time? So in what do you see in the shifts and in the profession? Where do you see this ability now to go from reactive to proactive, but also where do you see the shifts in headcount? Now they're going to start to automate these processes, AI is going to help expedite these things. Where do you see kind of the shifts and need in the accounting profession specifically?
Yeah, so I get asked a lot, how should accounting firms upskill? What are the types of, what are the skills they need to acquire? How do they, retrain their staff? And when I'm asked these questions, the answers that they're expecting are, well, you've got to train them on, data analytics skills. You've got to train them on, how AI models are trained, and there's this sort of, what are the new technology skills, sort of,
Yeah.
that are always there in that question, and my answer is, well, first you've got to look at, well, if you're not doing these low value repetitive jobs anymore, and you want to provide a higher quality product and more products, whether that's, to the business, your a CFO to their business, or CPA firm to their clients. What are these new products and services you want to provide? What are the skills that your staff need to provide those services? And that's where you need to focus on your upskilling. By and large, good technology doesn't require massive reskilling of the workforce. What we want to do is reskill the workforce for the new jobs they're going to be doing. And one of the great things about AI that makes this such a virtuous cycle is that AI is really good at upskilling people.
Yeah.
So, I personally, when large language models started to become really, really impactful and disruptive, I had to learn how to become a developer again, right? In today's world, where
Wow.
so much of development is with AI, it's in the sort of the cycle of developing and training models, and as a CTO of a company with 4,000 developers, what you don't want to do is go sit by an intern and say, hey, intern, can you teach me Python? Help me understand why this isn't compiling or whatever. And so ChatGPT became my tutor for several months as I learned these new skills, to help me learn these new skills. And
Wow.
it's no judgment. It's as a tutor, very, very helpful. So it's acquire the new skills to
Yeah.
support the products and services that you want to be delivering. And remember that AI, as a technology, is really helpful in learning those skills.
So if I hear you right, then it's almost kind of like leading the receiver a little bit of, hey, identify what you want to do. What do you want? What, and I'll just throw stuff, you want company valuations, transaction, whatever you want to offer more of, and then work towards that, and then leverage AI to accelerate the learning curve, to get, further faster with the teams, so that, set your target, and then now AI can accelerate because you can tap into, thousands of brains on how to do it faster, better, cheaper, and accelerate the learning curve.
Yeah. So, you like to talk about one advisor, 100 clients.
Yeah.
I think part of that is having a deeper understanding of more types of businesses.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go from 10 clients to 100 clients, part of my hypothesis is that you're going to have to understand more industries.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I really, really enjoy in my job as a CTO, is having, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, having them do research for me. I'm
Oh,
regularly having ChatGPT go off and write reports for me. And I get the report back, and then I dig in with ChatGPT. And so, when I'm out there looking at opportunities for the business, it's incredible to me how quickly I can learn about an industry, about a market, about a technology that's sort of starting to arise, just by having this large language model at my side through the process.
You hit on something that how exciting is that? I know I have some other friends of mine that entered the accounting they were software and they entered accounting profession. Didn't know anything about the accounting profession. And they created a group of GPTs that had different personas and literally created this group of tutors in the space, and not only the mechanics, but also the nuances and thought processes. How exciting is that for you to go, hey, I want to know more about X, and be what would take years of tutor and mentoring and advising and all that, you may be able to have at your fingertips within seconds. I mean,
Yeah.
it's got to get you excited as a CTO of the world of possibilities, of the impact that you can have on, and I'll get a little philosophical here, but the ability to impact, families and businesses and communities of people, because having that foundational financial literacy and operational literacy through a system that can deliver that. I mean, you can potentially impact thousands of lives and families for those poor entrepreneurs that, like we just talked about, the struggles of a lot of times we didn't know what we didn't know and we were naive. Imagine the next generation of entrepreneurs and business owners that they'll get further faster, but they don't have to make the same dumb mistakes that a lot of us have made. And so that's
Yeah.
got to be exciting with that much
Yeah. Well,
empowered.
and I think that this should lead to an explosion of entrepreneurs. Uh, you know, there's a lot of would-be entrepreneurs that have the courage, that have the idea, but there's barriers to starting a business. Uh, you know, there's a lot of great ideas out there, but there's not the training that's needed to run the business, in a compliant way and with an understanding of how finance works. So I really do believe that AI now should radically drop the barriers to entry for entrepreneurs, and I think we should see an explosion of creativity in the world of entrepreneurs. Um, so that's in itself is I think very exciting.
Well, the yeah, I've heard the shift in exponential organizations, that they say that there's going to be the next. Some thought leaders think you're going to have the next $1 billion organization with 3 people in the next 10 years, or maybe faster. But I'm hearing those kind of comments because of the fact
Yeah.
that economies scales of big companies used to be I could scale faster because I had access to resources, economies of scale. Well, that flip it on its ear now. The small
Yeah.
businesses have access to that same kind of power. Well, listen, as we start to wrap things up, I always like to ask people in there, if they had a time machine, and I could go and you could go back in time, and your more experienced self could go catch yourself walking across campus, and make sure he still talks to the accounting person. I want to make sure, because I'm thankful you're helping the accounting profession. But what words of advice would you give yourself that, hey, something you learned a lesson the hard way that you could have got further faster, if you had that little nugget of wisdom?
Yeah, I think about this question a lot, and what I always go back to is I don't know that it's necessarily some wisdom that I could I think it's, if only I'd had the experience to know when I was being too confident, when I wasn't being confident enough. That when I look back over all the years building Intacct,
Yeah.
that's what I wish. I wish that I had the wisdom that comes with experience to know when I should be acting with more confidence, and when I should be perhaps listening to others more and not being quite as brash. But every time I have that conversation with myself, it then leads me to, but remember, Aaron, a lot of the innovation that came out of Intacct, it came from that youthful exuberance. And there were a lot of great ideas we had that turned out to not be so great. And we moved on, we survived. Our customers forgave us for these, or they didn't notice because there clearly wasn't a match, right? So I wouldn't change a lot, to be honest. What I, when I think about this, what it always comes back to is I really wish I had the experience that I have now without giving up that youthful exuberance that I had, 25 years ago.
Wow. That's some good advice, because sometimes it's good to not know what you don't know, because you probably wouldn't have made the leap. Man,
Yep.
well, hey, thanks for, man, I could keep, and I'm sure there will be many requests to have some follow-up conversations with you, because um, I just know how you think, and I am excited about the things that you're cooking up, that what's coming next. So, man, I appreciate, I so much appreciate your time today.
Thank
And,
you. Likewise.
and
These are
we'll,
great conversations for me.
oh man, well, hey,
It's nice to reflect.
well, that's part of the whole mission of what I was trying to do on this podcast, is to just, hey, everybody hears the success story. A lot of times we won't share those times of, just you're struggling, you're not sure you're going to make it through, and some hard lessons learned that other people could benefit from. So, again, hey, thanks for your time today. Hey, everybody, stay tuned, for next week's episode, where again we're just trying to help people learn, not learn lessons the hard way, and get further faster. All right, hey, take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Codified Wisdom with your host, Eric Eager. Want more? Subscribe and follow Codified Wisdom on YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. To learn more about Eric Eager and how 4Impact Data helps leaders get further faster, visit 4impactdata.com.